Hey class, so just a couple reminders. Remember your quiz 4 is timed, and you also need to be showing all of your work. So if you don't show your work, you're not going to be able to get full points on the assignment. So make sure you're showing all of your work as you go through. So here is your review. We're going to go through and look at all of these problems here. You have an hour to complete this. Okay, so number 1 is asking us to prime factors. So remember, when we prime factor, this is where we do the factor tree. Right? And we're just going to keep splitting up. So it doesn't matter what numbers you pick as long as they multiply up to 88. So I'm picking 8 and 11. You could pick 2 and 44, whatever, 4 and 22, as long as you keep breaking down. So 8 then splits into 4 and 2. 4 then splits into 2 and 2. Remember, we are then going to take every number that is at the bottom of the tree. Okay, so here we have a 2 times a 2 times a 2 times an 11. Okay, number 2. Okay, here we are looking for the greatest common factors. So remember, there's no addition or subtraction between, so we're just looking for the GCF. So the largest number that will go into 20, 30, and 50 is 10. And they do all have the variable. So we're going to use the smallest exponent. And so our GCF is 10V. Number 3, okay, so this one's asking us to factor out, okay? And when we factor, right, according to our rules, the first thing that we're going to try and do is look for a GCF. That's always step 1. So can we find a GCF of 12 and 9? The answer is yes. Okay, they're both divisible by 3. Do they both have the variable? Yes. The smaller exponent is 1. Okay, we're going to divide that out, which leaves us with a 4 plus 3n, right? We divide. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 2 minus 1 is 1. And then we write the GCF in front. So this would be our final answer. We have 4 terms. So this one is telling us that we need to factor by grouping. Okay, which means we're going to chop this in half. And we're going to find the GCF of each side. So our GCF over here on the left is a V squared. Right, we're dividing this out. So 3 minus 2 gives me the 1. There's nothing that goes into 3 and 7, so it's really like there's a 1 there, right? When it's nothing, it's actually 1. Then we're going to do our right-hand side. So what goes into 6? That will also go into 14. Remember, we've talked about how you could take this number divided by this number to make sure you're getting the GCF over here, and we'll get 2. They do not both have the V, so we can't pull out a V. So we'll get a 3V plus 7, which is really good because these have to match. So our 2 numbers that we pulled out go together in one binomial. And then the common binomial is our other one. Number 5, we are also factoring by grouping. It is 4 terms. So when we factor by grouping, right, we're chopping it in half, just like we looked at. So the same idea as the last problem. We're getting our GCF out over here. 4 and 5 have just a GCF of 1, but they do both have the variables. So the smaller exponent is x2. So we'll divide that out. Okay, over here on the right-hand side, right, again, if we're doing that 24 divided by 4, we'll get 6. But remember, when that leading coefficient is negative, when the number in front of this half is negative, we have to pull out a negative. That's the way we make it match. Oops, I copied this over wrong, right? That 24 really has an x on it. So we'll have a 4x. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. So now these match, which is good. So we'll put our 2 GCFs together. X squared minus 6. And a 4x minus 5. Number 6, we are asked to factor. Again, it doesn't tell us what method, but we see that it's 3 terms. Okay, there's not a GCF. So we're going to look at this as a trinomial. So remember, we're going to multiply A times C. So 1, there's really a 1 there, times negative 20. And we will start listing. Okay, so when we list, right, we're ignoring the negative for a moment. So 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 3 times nothing, 4 times 5. We're done because 5 is already over on the right-hand side, so we don't need to list anymore. Okay, and our rule was that when we had a subtraction followed by a subtraction, we wanted our left-hand side to be positive and our right-hand side to be negative. So make sure you have that list copied down in your notes to go back and check. If you don't know what list I'm talking about, watch either of the videos on factoring trinomials part 2. So you get that copied down. Okay, so we want the set that adds up to negative 8, which is our 2 and negative 10. Because A is 1, we can use the shortcut here, right? So we're just going straight into our 2 binomials where our variable goes first. And we picked a positive 2 and a negative 10. Number 7 is just asking us to factor. So first thing we're checking is if there is a GCF, which there is not, right? They do not all have the X. Nothing will go into 3, 5, and 2. So then that means 3 terms is a trinomial. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And we're going to start listing. 1 and 6, 2 and 3. So now in this case, we have a positive followed by a negative. That tells us that we want our first one negative and our second one positive. Okay, so we're going to pick a negative 1 and a positive 6. So we're going to split this up here into a negative 1 and a positive 6. We cannot use the shortcut on this one because we have a number in front that is not 1. Okay, so these both get the X. We bring down the negative 2. We bring down the 3x squared. Okay, we're going to chop this in half then and start factoring by grouping. So over here we have a GCF of X. Over here we have a GCF of 2. Okay, our 2 GCFs are going to go together. And then our common binomial is going to go together. So we'll have an X plus 2 and a 3X minus 1. Number 8, we have V squared plus 10V plus 25. Okay, it just says to factor, so we're going to check and see if there's a GCF, which there is not. So then we are going to do 3 terms as a trinomial. So 1 times 25 is 25. And we will start listing. 1 and 25, 2 and nothing, 3 and nothing, 4 and nothing, 5 and 5. Okay, we want the set that will add up to 10, which is 5 and 5. Here we do have a 1 in front, so we can use the shortcut. We picked a positive 5 and a positive 5. Now you could totally write your answer this way. Okay, but keep in mind when we have 2 of the same thing, right, that also means that it's just V plus 5 squared. Either way would be fine. Oops. Last problem, we have Z squared minus 64. Okay, so again, we're always looking for a GCF first. If it just says to factor, there's no GCF. So this has 2 terms, so then we're going to check for a special case. Okay, so if we're checking for a special case, we're going to say, okay, what number times itself gives us Z? Well, remember, we take half of the exponent. Okay, what number times itself gives us 64? If you don't know, remember in your calculator, you're going to press second, then the X squared button, then 64 equals, and it will tell you 8. So from there, we're going to go into two binomials where we have to keep the order exactly the same. If z was first, z goes first. If 8 was second, 8 goes second. 1 gets an addition, and 1 gets a subtraction. Okay, when you are finished with your quiz, you need to be uploading your work. So you're going to have to take a picture and upload your work for me to use that to grade it when I grade your quiz.